Time again for another installment of the basics, and let me start by saying I hope everybody out there had a great Christmas. Now, on to the show. I've been asked over the years, and recently again by some newer players, as to why in Magic the Gathering a lot of players, the majority of them in fact, make up decks that contain quads. That means multiples of 4 cards, and lots of them. I'm going to explain that on today's show, so let's get to it. Now right off the bat, if you don't already know, Magic the Gathering was the first card game to come out. It came out in 1993. Because it's been around a long time, players have developed a lot of different strategies for the game. But one of the first strategies to start coming out, and that still endures to this day, is the fact that quads are used in decks, and that is multiple of 4 of the same cards. And there's not one reason why this came about. If you talk to any player, you'll get the same response, especially if it's a player that's been playing since the beginning. The multiple of 4 seem to have been settled on because it just works well in the game. And this goes with whatever your opponent is countering with and the amount of cards in a draw deck. 4 just seems to work. So for example, I don't have every color represented, but you have cards like Death Grip in black, and this is to counter a green spell being cast. So if you're playing someone with a green deck and you have a black deck that is heavy on counters for green, this is what you'd use. Creatures like Battering Craghorn for red. So it's a 3/1 creature with first strike. By having 4 of them in your deck, even if your opponent eliminates the first 1 or 2, you still have 2 more to do damage because it's heavy on attack. Small creatures like Cephalid Scout in blue. It's a 1/1, but it's flying and you can sacrifice a land to draw a card. That can be huge. So you'd want to definitely have a multiple of 4 of that. And finally, my last example, Pollen Remedy in white. You sacrifice a land, prevent the next 3 damage that would be dealt this turn to any number of target creatures and or players divided as you choose. If you paid the kicker cost, prevent the next 6 damage this way instead. So as you can see, a multiple of 4 helps with a lot of the card types. Because even if somehow the first couple cards get knocked out, you still have 2 more in your deck. And as a player that also uses multiples of 2 and sometimes 3, I have years ago switched to the multiples of 4 in a lot of my decks because it's just a well-rounded number that works out in gameplay. And a lot of players that still play up until constructed for I think 10th edition or 11th edition will still have their decks loaded with quads. It's only the newer players with the newer expansions that maybe are not as experienced, or the cards are a little different nowadays, so they won't have those same multiples. Now, as an addendum, just before anyone decides to ask me about it, the same thing applies to artifacts. You do see a lot of quads in artifacts in people's decks, but you also see a lot of single cards for artifacts as well, because there are some artifacts you don't want to have too many in your deck. But in regards to the main 5 colors and even the gold cards that I mentioned on an earlier episode, multiples of 4 still work. It's the perfect number if you want to keep having them come up in your deck and do damage or help you win the game. It's as simple as that. Have a great day, everybody.